This must be horrible for a guy like you, who you spent your whole life talking about how government tries to do too much, which it does, and spends too much. And here you have Trump, who is the Republican, who is aggrandizing more power than anybody, as we just talked about. And on the other side, you have the guy running in New York, Mamdani, right? Okay, who's like a straight up communist. I mean, he is. He talks about, you know, the things that communists say. I mean, he wants free grocery stores, free buses.
I want him to win.
You want him to win?
Yeah. I think every 20 years or so.
Wait.
We need it.
Is this going to be a country that I don't recognize in 5 to 10 years if we don't have these two pillars? If we don't, I mean, where are the Democrats going with this? If Mamdani is the face of the Democrats on the East Coast and Katie Porter is the face on the West Coast, I don't know if that's great politically for that party.
Bill Maher is now taking direct aim at Zohran Mamdani, and this time the warning feels impossible to ignore. This is not just another loud progressive voice, but a figure pushing New York toward higher taxes, bigger government control, and a clear resistance to private property. The message is straightforward. If this becomes the future of Democratic politics in America's largest city, then the risks are already out in the open. And once these ideas move from rhetoric into real power, the consequences can escalate fast. So if you are ready for a deeper breakdown, here is everything you need to know.
The guy he just brought up, that's who you're all going to have to answer for. So I got to get your answer. This is Mamdani, if you've been not following the news. He won the Democratic primary in New York, so he is certainly likely to be the next mayor. We don't know. I mean, there's a lot of opposition because we've never had someone this radical. Some of the things he says, prisons were obsolete. What purpose do they serve? I could think of a couple. The NYPD is racist, anti-queer, and a major threat to public safety. I think most people think cops are protecting their public safety, even though there's issues and problems with the police department. Do you like capitalism? No. We've never had a guy quite like this. You know, he quotes Marxist, each according to their need. I mean, that's straight up communism. Whether you call it the abolition of private property, you call it housing guarantees, it's preferable to what is going on right now.
Maher was sounding the alarm about Mamdani long before the election season even heated up, and now that warning is starting to look sharper with each passing day. He pointed out the early red flags, especially the kind of politics that appears compassionate on the surface, but often leaves taxpayers carrying the full burden. He has made similar calls before, like when he cautioned Democrats against blindly rallying behind Kamala Harris. Yet that advice was brushed aside and it ended up costing them politically. That pattern is what makes this moment stand out. Maher tends to recognize the weak points in a political strategy long before the consequences hit everyone else. And if he is right again, Mamdani's rise turn into another avoidable mistake that Democrats fail to stop in time.
Is this going to be a country that I don't recognize in 5 to 10 years if we don't have these two pillars? If we don't, I mean, where are the Democrats going with this? If Mamdani is the face of the Democrats on the East Coast and Katie Porter is the face on the West Coast, I don't know if that's great politically for that party.
And this is not just a problem for Democrats. It becomes a concern for the country when one of the two major parties starts shaping its future around aggressive tax and spend ideas. In this view, the rise of figures like Mamdani signals a shift toward policies focused more on redistribution than practical outcomes, which risks pulling the broader political conversation off balance. America tends to function best when both parties compete with grounded, realistic ideas, not when one side leans too heavily into approaches that critics argue can discourage growth, increase dependency, and frame it as fairness. The argument here is that Democrats are at their strongest when they combine pragmatism with a clear sense of balance and credible policy direction. And the real question now is whether they can return to that approach or continue moving deeper into ideology.
Let me tell you about the story that liberal algorithms locked out. Her name is Sia Weaver. And if you ask anyone in the blue sky bubble who that is, they'll look at you like a turkey looking up at the rain. But she's kind of important in New York, being Major Mamdani's chief of the Office to Protect Tenants. And since Mamdani's big issue is the rent's too damn high, yes, he stole this guy's act. It's a very key appointment in the most important city in the country, which is also our financial center. It matters that the mayor stands by, and so I assume stands with, someone who says things like, if you don't believe in the government's sacred right to seize private property, it's over.
Yep, this is exactly the kind of rhetoric that sets Ma off. Because to him, attacking private property is not just a bold slogan. It signals a much deeper mindset built around taxation and control. That is why this moment carries weight once. Voices within a political circle start framing ownership itself as the issue. The conversation shifts away from reform and moves toward power. In that view, it becomes a clear warning sign because a hardline tax agenda does not simply stop at raising rates or expanding spending. It can begin treating private ownership, individual success, and economic independence as problems to be limited, regulated, and redistributed. That is the concern driving his reaction, because when language like this edges closer to real authority, the tone changes, and what emerges is not seen as practical governance, but as ideology presented in a more polished form.
Seize private property. Home ownership is racist. Elect more communists. Private property, especially home ownership, is a weapon of white supremacy. Really? Even among the 20 million black Americans who own their own home? I mean, these are the kind of utterances I might forgive as something a dumb white girl said while she was at Bryn Mawr. Because it's the kind of privilege hating you can only learn for $95,000 a year. But these are statements made as an adult. Yes. For co-eds from elite private colleges, you're only a lesbian until graduation, but the communism lasts a lifetime.
That is also why Maher sees Mamdani as more than just a local New York figure. To him, Mani represents a broader shift, where a visible part of the Democratic coalition is growing more comfortable with aggressive tax policies, redistribution, and heavier government involvement. That is what gives this debate national significance, because if this kind of agenda is being rewarded and normalized in a place like New York, it stops being a local issue and starts looking like a preview of what could spread elsewhere.
One of the things that we've said, beyond saying that we're going to make this a sanctuary city for LGBTQIA plus workers, beyond saying that we're going to establish an office of LGBTQIA plus affairs, is also that we're going to provide $65 million in funding for gender-affirming care, the same amount of funding that the federal government threatened to pull out from local providers for that kind of work. And in this moment especially, if we want to fight the Trump administration, we have to do so by fully funding our own services, taxing the wealthiest New Yorkers and corporations.
Ma sees Mani as a figure who could hurt Democrats from within, because when the party shifts too far left, it risks losing the moderates it needs, especially with tax-heavy policies and controversial spending. He views moves like large-scale funding for gender-related programs as reinforcing a pattern of more spending and stronger ideological messaging, which many voters may see as disconnected from their priorities. And that is why he believes it could end up benefiting Republicans while signaling a deeper issue inside the party.
This must be horrible for a guy like you, who you spent your whole life talking about how government tries to do too much, which it does, and spends too much. And here you have Trump, who is the Republican, who is aggrandizing more power than anybody, as we just talked about. And on the other side, you have the guy running in New York, Mamdani, right? Okay, who's like a straight-up communist. I mean, he is. He talks about, you know, the things that communists say. I mean, he wants free grocery stores, free buses.
I want him to win.
You want him to win?
Yeah.
On the surface, it sounds appealing, with soft language, moral framing, and big promises that make a heavy tax agenda seem compassionate. But critics argue that once you look past the slogans, it feels like a familiar pattern in a new package. Maher's point is that the branding may change, but the core instinct stays the same: more taxes, more government control, and a belief that reality will simply adjust to the plan.
It is the dead of winter, another snowstorm is coming, and homeless encampments are still a critical problem in Mayor Mamdani's New York. So how is the mayor going to deal with it? Political reporter Marcia Kramer took her questions to Mamdani in this story that you will see here only on CBS News New York.
They are an eyesore. CBS News New York discovering homeless encampments, 2 on the Upper West Side, 2 in Hell's Kitchen, with many wondering how the new mayor will deal with the twin problems of finding a humane solution and optics that make it look like the city is out of control. This man, afraid to show his face, says he's called 311 repeatedly about the 2 encampments on West 45th Street.
They take the call like they're supposed to, but nothing's really happening.
How do you feel about the fact that nothing's happening?
Well, I don't feel good about it because I've been in this neighborhood for 3 decades.
Critics argue that when cities increase spending and promises but still struggle with issues like homelessness and public order, it creates visible frustration for residents who feel things are not improving despite higher costs. They point to past examples where higher taxes and expanded government did not lead to better outcomes, and warned that if this pattern continues in New York, people may stop seeing it as compassion and start seeing it as policy failure.
I think every 20 years or so,
Wait.
we need every 20 years or so, we need a conspicuous, confined experiment with socialism so we can crack it up again. Socialist slogan used to be, workers of the world unite, you have nothing to lose but your chains. The new socialist slogan is, trust us, this time it won't be a mess.
Critics argue that socialist-leaning policies have repeatedly failed in practice and often reappear in new forms, framed as compassionate tax and spending plans. They believe these systems overlook human incentives like competition, innovation, and productivity, which drive economic growth. In their view, heavy government control and redistribution can lead to slower growth, expanding bureaucracy and inefficiency over time. They also point to historical examples where similar approaches did not deliver the promised outcomes and warn that excessive reliance on state-driven solutions can weaken economic freedom and long-term progress, ultimately affecting everyone in the system.
Resolution, here's one. Get out of your media bubble. The most frustrating thing that happens to me whenever I'm off is people I run into want me to do my job, which I'm on vacation from, privately in restaurants and at parties, and, well, the bathhouse is a separate situation. But look, I'm happy to share my opinions wherever, except for this. Everybody, left and right, is only half informed.
Maher's closing message goes beyond Mamdani, New York, or any single election cycle, as he encourages people to step out of ideological bubbles and judge policies by real results instead of branding. His concern is that echo chambers can form where tax increases are always labeled as compassion, criticism is dismissed, and poor outcomes are explained away rather than addressed. In his view, this can lead to people becoming confidently wrong because disagreement feels dangerous and facts get filtered through ideology rather than evidence, which ultimately weakens accountability and prevents any political side from fully facing the real impact of its policies. And that's the real debate happening right now, and it's far from over. This is Debate Storm. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you subscribe, drop a like, and share your thoughts in the comments, because your opinion is part of this conversation. Stay sharp, stay questioning, and I'll see you in the next one.